All right, let's get into it. Today, we are going to take a really deep dive into the very architecture of our modern economy. We're pulling back the curtain on a system that, whether we know it or not, affects every single one of us every single day. We're exploring the cycle of debt.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a little thought experiment, and it's a big one. Imagine, just for a second, you wake up tomorrow and poof, some global miracle happened and every single debt on the planet is gone. Wiped clean. Your mortgage? Gone. Student loans? Vanished. That credit card balance you keep meaning to pay off? Totally erased. And it's not just you, it's everybody. Every corporation, every government on Earth is completely 100% debt-free. So, what would that world actually look like? A paradise, right? A global party?
You'd probably think it'd be a golden age, a world finally free. But the shocking reality is the exact opposite. The entire global economy would instantly vaporize. The lights would go out. Supply chains would just stop. And your bank account, the one you thought held your money, it would read zero. Why? Because you've just stumbled on the biggest, most counterintuitive secret of our financial system. In our modern world, money is debt. If you get rid of all the debt, you get rid of pretty much all the money too.
Welcome to Capital in Context, where we tell the stories behind the world's most important economic and financial moments. Each video explores a moment in time, a market collapse, a policy decision, or a financial innovation, to explain exactly what happened, why it happened, and how it still shapes your world today.
And this brings us to a fundamental paradox, doesn't it? It's a core misunderstanding that shapes our entire financial lives. See, to us as individuals, debt feels like a burden. It's a hole we need to dig ourselves out of. But for the system itself, debt is something else entirely. It's not a bug in the software. It's the main feature. It's the engine.
Right now, the world is swimming in over $300 trillion of debt. It's a number so huge it barely even computes in our brains. I mean, if you stacked 300 trillion $1 bills, the pile would reach the moon and back more than 40 times. Now, for most of us, that number is terrifying. But for the architects of the financial system, that staggering figure isn't a liability. Nope, that's the asset side of the ledger. That is the global money supply.
Now, what's so wild about this slide is how it just completely dismantles what almost all of us were taught about banking. We all kind of grew up with this warehouse myth. The idea feels right, Banks are like these secure warehouses for money. You deposit your savings, the bank keeps it safe, and then it lends a chunk of that existing money out to somebody else. Seems simple, responsible, logical. But it's almost entirely wrong. The reality, and this is confirmed by central banks like the Bank of England, is the complete opposite. Loans create deposits. The act of borrowing is what brings almost all of our money into existence in the first place.
So how does that actually work? I mean, if banks aren't lending out our savings, where in the world does the money for a new mortgage or a business loan even come from? Well, this brings us to a mechanism that is so deceptively simple, but it underpins the entire global economy. It's a process that happens thousands of times a second all around the world, creating our money supply, seemingly out of thin air.
Let's just walk through this step by step. Let's say you want to buy a house, so you go apply for a mortgage. The banker doesn't go to some giant vault in the back to check if they have enough of other people's savings to give you. No, they just check your creditworthiness, basically your ability to pay it back. Once you get the green light, that's when the magic happens. The bank literally just types the loan amount, say $500,000, into your account. At that exact moment, $500,000 of brand new digital money is created. It did not exist a second before. You then transfer that money to the seller and it becomes their deposit, flowing out into the wider economy. See, the loan created a new deposit.
This is what economists have nicknamed fountain pen money. It's a great term for money created at the stroke of a pen, or, today, the tap of a keyboard. It's not a transfer of existing money. It is the creation of new money. The loan is an asset for the bank. That's your promise to repay. And the new deposit is a liability for the bank, their promise to give you your funds. They're created at the exact same time, perfectly balanced on the bank's books. This is the secret engine of our economy, and it gives private commercial banks a truly staggering amount of power.
And this chart, wow, this just illustrates the sheer scale of what we're talking about. Think about the money you use every day. The physical cash and coins, the stuff printed by the government, that makes up a tiny, almost insignificant sliver of the total money supply. In most developed economies, it's only about 3%. The other 97%? That's all this digital fountain pen money created and existing only on the computer ledgers of commercial banks every time they make a loan. So almost all the money we think of is actually just commercial bank IOUs.
Now, this whole setup might sound like some weird modern glitch, right? A flaw of the digital age. But it's not. The system was actually designed this way, on purpose, for a very specific reason, centuries ago. To really understand our present, we've got to go back to its origin. Let's see how this all began.
Okay, the pivotal moment was way back in 1694. Before then, if a king owed money, it was his own personal problem, and it was usually temporary. If he wanted to fight a war, he had to beg or borrow, and if he lost, his creditors might lose everything. But England was nearly broke from a long, costly war with France. So a group of financiers came up with a revolutionary deal. A new private bank, the Bank of England, would lend the government money that it didn't actually have. In exchange, the government would recognize the bank's notes as official currency and, get this, pay interest on the debt forever. That one move transformed debt from a temporary crisis into a permanent core feature of the modern state.
So the really crucial point is this. The government's promise to pay its debt became the bank's most valuable asset. The system was basically designed so the debt would never truly be paid back, just serviced with interest and rolled over forever. And this created this powerful circular dependency, where government bonds, backed by the state's power to tax its citizens, became the ultimate safe asset, the bedrock of collateral for the entire financial system. A bank could hold government debt, then lend against it, creating even more money.
But here's the catch, and it is a huge one. This system, built on the constant creation of new debt just to function and grow, has a built-in self-destruct mechanism, a suicide switch, if you will. It has this inverted logic that is profoundly dangerous if it ever gets triggered on a massive scale.
The logic is perfectly symmetrical, and it's absolutely critical to understand this part. Just as a bank creates new money when it issues a loan, that money is destroyed when the loan is repaid. So when you make your monthly mortgage payment, the interest part goes to the bank as profit, sure, but the principal, the part that pays down the actual loan, is literally extinguished from the economy. It vanishes from the money supply. It doesn't go back into a vault to be lent to someone else. The asset, which was the loan, and the liability, your deposit used to pay it, they just cancel each other out and disappear.
And this is why economists and central bankers are absolutely terrified of a process called deleveraging. That's just a fancy word for when everybody, households, businesses, gets scared and starts paying off their debts at the same time without taking on new ones. What feels like a really responsible thing for you to do as an individual becomes a total catastrophe for the whole system. As this chart shows, when mass repayment happens, the money supply shrinks dramatically. This is exactly what triggered the deflationary spiral of the Great Depression in 1929 and the financial crisis in 2008. As the money supply collapses, there isn't enough currency to do business. Companies fail, unemployment soars, and the economy just grinds to a halt. The system requires a constant or even growing level of debt just to stay alive.
So, if paying off all our collective debt would crash the system, how is it even managed? What happens when fear takes over, the fountain pens stop writing, and nobody wants to borrow or lend? Well, this brings us to the modern endgame and the really extraordinary tools that central banks have come up with to keep this cycle going when it threatens to collapse on itself. The primary solution, and it's been used on a massive scale since 2008, is called quantitative easing, or QE. You can think of it as the central bank taking over the job of money creation when the commercial banks get cold feet. So when private lending freezes up, the central bank steps in. It creates brand new digital money on its own balance sheet and uses it to buy government bonds and other assets from the big banks. This basically bypasses the whole commercial lending process and injects money directly into the financial system to stop it from shrinking and collapsing.
But QE has a really profound and controversial side effect. This fire hose of new money, it doesn't enter the system at the bottom, it enters at the very top. It flows to the large financial institutions that sell their bonds to the central bank. So now they're flush with cash. What do? Well, they buy other assets, stocks, real estate, and that drives up the prices of those assets. So the people who already own assets get richer. By the time any of that money trickles down to the average person through wages or whatever, the prices of the very things they need to buy, like a house, have already been inflated. It basically acts as a stealth tax on savers and a massive subsidy for asset holders. So what's the crucial takeaway from all this? It's really about understanding the difference between the digital currency in this system, which you could almost call dead money, since it can be created or extinguished at will by this cycle of debt, and real, durable wealth. Real wealth is found in productive assets that can't just be printed away with a keyboard. It's businesses that create actual value, property that provides shelter, infrastructure that helps society function, And just as importantly, it's found in productive skills that hold their value no matter how many digits are on a computer screen.
You see, this system isn't a force of nature. It's a human invention, and it kind of prefers that you don't understand how it works, because once you do, you can no longer be controlled by a simplistic fear of debt. You can start making financial decisions based on foresight instead of just reaction. The question this all leaves us with is a really personal one. Knowing that the financial map you've been handed was drawn by creditors for their own benefit, are you going to keep following their pre-drawn path, or are you going to use this knowledge to start drawing your own?
Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, hit subscribe to Capital in Context. Remember, it's not chaos, it's design. You were just never meant to see it.